All right. How you doing, folks? Ron Raymond here with the Raymond Report Sports Betting Podcast with Ross Benjamin of RBWins.com for a Thursday, November 5th. Hopefully you guys are having yourself a good start to your morning. And I'm joined here by my good friend, co-host, Ross Benjamin of RBWins.com. You know what, Ross? I keep coming on these podcasts saying it's like Groundhog Day with COVID. I wake up, there's COVID every morning. Yeah. Now it's the elections. I wake up, there's always.
Man.
You guys just settle that thing over there?
No kidding, man. Talk about embarrassing, Ron. It's just this. It's become a circus all the way around, from all the stuff with Trump and now this elections, and now they're already talking about having a recount and getting lawyers involved, and all. Get it over with already. Yeah. Make a decision. We support our president and go forward. So very turbulent times in our country right now, Ron. Yeah. A lot of divisiveness with the racial inequalities and then all this stuff with COVID. And it seems like there's such a disparity between Democrats and Republicans, more so than ever. So hopefully it all gets straightened out. But in the meantime, you know what? You can only control how you behave. And that's the bottom line. I love my country. We live in, in this hemisphere here, U.S., Canada. We're very fortunate, both countries, the freedoms that we have. And try living somewhere else, and you'll appreciate more where we live.
Hey, trust me, I served in the forces, and I served with Americans and a lot of people in the UK and all that, and we're neighbors, and when you guys have pain, we have pain. That's the way I see it, and it will get rectified. It will get, and then the healing process will take place. But we wish you guys all the best. And as your neighbors from the north, we're watching, and we just wish everybody to stay safe, and we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, I always remember Don Cherry back, it was about 10 years ago during the World Cup of Hockey, or whatever it was called at that time, an international event before the season started with all the pros, the best from all each country. And Russia was playing the United States, and the United States was ahead of Canada in the round robin series, and all the fans were a game was being played on Canadian soil, and the fans were cheering for Russia. And Don Cherry was irate in between periods. He says, "Hey, what do you think? If we go to war, if somebody attacks us, who do you think's going to come to our aid, Russia or United States?"
Exactly.
Come on already.
So, I remember that. I remember that show.
You remember that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do remember that, and that's why I always say, we're the best of neighbors, and then we live in North America and with Mexico, and it's three great countries, right?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Hey, man, you know what? We'll hopefully we'll declare a winner, and the world can move on and get. Yeah. I don't even know what the word normal means anymore.
No, between what we're seeing here in this election and the COVID-19, and again, getting back to what we do for a living, again, numerous COVID positive tests that we have to account for this week. San Francisco, I believe, had some positive tests, or no, Green Bay, I'm sorry. And San Francisco with all the injuries, talk about a tough call tonight. Anyway, Let's get to our thing, Ron.
All right, buddy. We got Lane wishing us good morning. Good morning, Lane, and everybody watching on our YouTube channel.
Good morning to all.
Sorry?
Good morning to all.
Good morning to all. Sorry, I did. Ross, we got 7 college football games we're going to break down. BYU, Boise State. That's going to be a good one. Michigan, Indiana. We're going to see how Michigan rebounds after that loss. West Virginia, Texas. That promises to be a good shootout. The big cocktail party in Jacksonville between the Gators and the Bulldogs. Clemson, Notre Dame. I can't wait till we talk about that one. Oklahoma State against Kansas State. I'm a little upset with OSU right now. I don't know if I want to do that game. Yeah. And then Liberty, the surprise team against Virginia Tech, and we'll get to that.
Intriguing, to see if we'll get to it. So I don't want to elaborate on that further.
Hey, Eric Catherine's on. He says, good morning. Good morning, Eric. Hope you're doing well, buddy. So Ross, let's go right into the BYU and the Boise State Broncos, the blue turf monster, will be in full effect Friday night. And BYU going into this game as a 3-point road favorite. The over-under at 61.5. The computer forecast, however, going to lean with the Boise State Broncos here. 28.8 to 24.9. Over-under at 53.76. Now, looking at Boise State, 7-0 in the year, but keep in mind the strength of schedule is not one of the toughest. 5-0 on home, 2-0 on the road. Boise State got
BYU 7-0. Yes.
Yeah, BYU. Sorry, did I say Boise State?
Yeah, by accident.
Okay, no, BYU started with a B, 7-0, and Boise State 2-0. They got going a couple weeks ago. Now they're coming off a couple of wins against Air Force, a 49-30, a game where Air Force just ran all over them.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get no passing game going. And then they beat Utah State 42-13. Looking at BYU, let's take a look at some of the bigger programs here. I guess you can call Houston Cougars a more recognizable program when you look at Division I type, like A, B, and C type teams.
Yeah.
43-26. I'm just looking for a quality of win. Okay, Navy week 1. I remember the coach for Navy coming out saying, "Man, it was like a touch football game out there. We didn't tackle worth crap." Looking at this game, Ross, BYU, they win this game. I'm not going to be one of those guys saying, you got to put them in the championship, bowl championship series because look at their strength of opponent. But going into this game, this will be a big game for them when it comes to ratings and all that stuff along the year.
Yeah, BYU, Ron, going into the year before this whole COVID crisis through the scheduling out of whack, they were going to be facing one of the toughest schedules in the country, but then the Pac-12 shut down, the Big Ten shut down. They had a really, really tough schedule, and they had to reshuffle the deck accordingly. And now they go from one of the toughest schedules to now we're talking about, okay, they're number 9 and undefeated, but how good are they really? Well, they'll be tested on Friday. This is going to be a good measuring stick, Ron. Boise, I always say, Ron, when you're looking for an underdog with value, you always want to make sure that, in my opinion anyway, you should make sure that you really believe the team has a realistic chance to win straight up. Now, you take the points always as an additional bonus, but Ron, since 1987, Boise State 156-31 straight up at home.
Wow.
Think about that. And since 2016, 25-3 straight up at home. So why am I mentioning these straight up numbers? Because Boise State's an underdog in this game. So a rare, as a matter of fact, you know how rare this is, Ron? Since 87, Boise State's only been a home underdog on 7 separate occasions.
Oh, wow.
And they've covered 5 of the 7. So very, very rare circumstance here. And we're going to find out, like you touched upon a very good point, BYU's strength of schedule. Are they as good as they seem? Yeah, they went to Houston and they were impressive in that win. But how good is Houston? Houston right now, to me, is not the caliber of team that Boise State is. Yeah, we got a short sample size on Boise State too, right, Ron? They only played 2 games. So very interesting matchup in terms of we'll know a lot about how good each team is after this contest.
And on that note, Ross, Houston played Central Florida last week, and that wasn't even close.
No, I know. Yeah, exactly.
So that tells you that that loss doesn't help BYU win here tonight because of that's amazing, and some great coaches have come through BYU too, right? Peterson, the coach at Washington, was there.
Boise State.
Boise State, yeah. Sorry, Boise State. Yeah. When I'm talking about your home records there, and a lot of good coaches have come through Boise State. And the one thing though that BYU is known for is their quarterbacks, right?
Yeah,
you look at
this kid's a good one, right, Ron? This kid we got now is pretty good.
Yeah. So Zach Wilson, and he's in the conversation. I wouldn't say he's up there in the Heisman talk yet. But he was at the beginning of the year, but that's when, none of the big dogs showed up to play in the conference. But now they got their work set up for them tonight. But look at this, Boise State, coming off a road win as a favorite, 7-3 straight up. So the last 3 years. So in this Boise State, they have a good history at home. BYU though, you can't overlook them. Like and you say it all the time, Ross. You say it all the time. Who am I going to put my money on? The bookmaker or the public, right?
Yeah.
And watching the line move on this game, it'll be interesting to see if there is any line move. It opened up at 2.5 and it's now at 3. So nothing really to get worried about. But I think going into this game, boy, this is a tough call to make.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to lay the points against Boise State on the road. So if I'm leaning in that direction, I might be looking at Boise State. So, but this is, you're right, Ron, extremely tough call. Might be one to really sit back and educate yourself how good either team is going to be going forward, because this is a measuring stick game.
And look at BYU's last few games: 41-10, 52-14, 43-26, 27-20. That's the only against University of Texas San Antonio. 45-14 against Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech's not that good this year.
No, they're terrible.
Troy 48-7, and then 55. They haven't had a close game all year except for that University. Maybe that's a game I got to go look at the stat sheet and see exactly what University of Texas San Antonio done well in that game to make it a close game like that. But it's Boise State. They're at home. And if we're in a COVID situation, that place will be rocking on Friday night. But maybe the total, Ross, is something I'm looking at. What's the Kogo here? 20. So the chance of going over is very low. But that's because of all the blowouts, right? And you got a stud quarterback at BYU. Yeah, no, I agree. This is a tough one. If anything, Ross, I probably lean with your stats on the home underdog here because I think that's a solid stat right there.
And here's another, here's a betting angle that I looked at. Again, it's a straight up betting angle, but I pay attention to straight up betting angles that favor the underdog in the matchup. And you mentioned Boise State 42-13 over Utah State and 49-30 over Air Force. In both of those contests, they were double-digit favorites and covered both of those games quite handily. Anytime you have a college football, since 2016, let me preface that, since 2016, anytime you have a college football home team that's coming off back-to-back covers as a double-digit favorite, like Boise State has, they're 31-3 straight up.
Oh, wow.
That's a 91.2% win percentage. And again, the straight up betting angle takes on special significance for me, Ron, because it backs the home underdog in this situation. So just thought I'd mention that because we both like those betting angles that are league wide or countrywide in college football, not just a team tried,
Yeah, I if I had to make a bet on this game, I'd be leaning towards Boise State, and then I'd look at the total maybe a bit. Wayne Rich says great information. Thank you, Wayne, for tuning in. And Gary Wyatt, he likes Boise on a teaser. That's interesting. Boise on a teaser. Yeah, you know what? Think about it. You're getting good dog value here at home on Boise on a Friday night.
Yep.
All right. Let's take a look at this game here, Ross. We got the Wolverines taking on Indiana Hoosiers. Now, Michigan going into this game as a 3-point road favorite. The over-under set at 54.5. ATS forecast, though, the computer pick, going to go with Harbaugh and company here. 36.7, 20.25.
Yeah, you might want to put the graphic up, buddy. So we could see, the listeners and viewers could see what we're referring to.
Yeah. There we go. There's Ron. There, I'm back in the saddle. Here we go. All right. Michigan -3, the over under at 54.5. ATS forecast, the computer pick 36.7, 20.25, the over under at 57. Looking at Michigan here, boy, that was a tough loss last weekend for Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh last week against Michigan State. And you know what? I went in my database and I wanted to go see the last time, and I'll do it while we're here, and I'll bring it up on here. I'll do it right now, in fact. And check this out, Ross. I'll go to the database at ATS Stats, and anytime Michigan is a double-digit 20-point or more favorite. So let me get as a home favorite, 22 or more. Let me see here, 22 or more home favorite. check out their record. 53-2.
Straight up.
53-2. Straight up. And then let's go back to the Harbaugh years. Let's say the last, he's been there 7 years now?
Yeah, somewhere in that area.
Okay, so let's go look back at the last 7 years. And I should have brought this up earlier, but look at this.
So your point is you're saying it was very rare for what happened last week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When they're a 20-point home favorite or more.
Yeah.
20-1. And look at that loss, Michigan State. And we're talking about, you look at some of these teams, you shouldn't be losing to these teams. And to me, losing to Michigan State last week, hate to, don't want to beat on the guy, but I just don't know what happened in that game. And I don't know if Harbaugh is an NFL coach and not a college football coach. And a coach is a coach, but I feel his strengths are more designed for the college football and NFL and not the pros.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's a legitimate point. If you look at it, they've been okay with him, but not at the standard they want to be, right? Ron, Michigan, when you're at Michigan, you want to be contending for a national title every year. If the very least, you want to be contending for a Big Ten title. So you can't afford to lose games as a 21.5 point home favorite like they did last week if you want to be in that particular conversation. The only thing I'll say about this, it's a weird year. I keep harping on the fact that we have to trust the bookmakers over the pollsters, Ron. And here's another specific example. You have the number 23 team in the land, Michigan, right now, against the number 13 Indiana Hoosiers, yet the lower ranked team is a road favorite in this contest. And that speaks volumes to me. Let's not forget Indiana. Last week, they beat Rutgers, who ironically beat Michigan State in week 1, but Rutgers won that game more so because Michigan State turned the ball over 7 times. If you better win if you get 7 turnovers from the opposition. And they came back down to earth last week. But Indiana, their big win against Penn State, again, Penn State outgained them by 270 yards in that game. They missed 3 field goals, and they turned the ball over several times. So this is going to be, again, one of those measuring stick games. If you're an Indiana fan and you want to know if your team is for real, are they worthy of the number 13 ranking? Well, you got to beat teams like Michigan. So we'll see. Interesting matchup again. We'll see how Michigan bounces back off of that loss. I think they're going to bounce back strong myself. But again, I'm not committed to making a play because of that. But that's my instinct at this point, Ron.
Oh, I agree with you. When I saw Michigan coming off a loss to Michigan State, and they're a 3-point road favorite, and I'll go back to your analogy of bookmakers. They know something that we don't. And Indiana, okay, they've had 2 tune-up games. They played Rutgers and Penn State. Hey, win's a win. The one thing with Michigan, the only problem they had last week is that they ran out of time. That was their, looking at the stats are pretty equal, and really it was leaning more towards Michigan. But Minnesota losing to Maryland last week, that doesn't look, that's a warning sign to tell me too that,
Yeah, exactly. That win doesn't look as impressive now for Michigan in week 1. Correct.
Exactly. Ross, we got some friends here. Alan Miles says, "Hey Ross, I guess UFC's defense isn't as bad as we thought. Shut down that Houston completely."
Yeah, well, it's still bad, buddy. I mean, all due respect, you're right when you look at the stats from last week, but if you look at their overall resume, that's still a shortcoming on that team. But hey, I'm glad if you did have UCF last week, I'm certainly glad that you won.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. And again, everybody who's watching today on our live stream, thanks for watching. And again, if you have any feedback or you want to make any suggestions to the show, or you want us to check a game real quick, we can do that. Ross, looking at this game, Indiana, the one thing I love in college football is when teams have a lot of character, a lot of fun. And it looks like right now this Indiana team, and winning helps. when you win football games and you got coaches dancing after the win in the locker room, and the players are all over them, they're showering with water. That's a great feeling as a coach, knowing your team is where you be. But here's the reality of this: you are 0-10 in your last 10 games against Michigan. Michigan is 8-0 the last 8 visits to your house, 4-3-1 against the number, 4-3-1 to the over/under. That 0-10 really stands out to me.
Yeah, well, let me say this: the database is only going back 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be real here. Michigan has won 24 straight games over Indiana. The last time Indiana has beaten Michigan was 1987.
So
it goes well beyond that 10 games. Around 24-0 their last 24.
And that's
So you're right. Your point is well taken.
And that's where I was going with this. As much as Michigan played bad, and these are Harbaugh's guys now. He's been there. These are his guys. This is his quarterback. He's the quarterback guru. And now this is going to be, like you said, a measuring stick game for Michigan. And if I were to play this game, I'd be playing Michigan this weekend. And I think Indiana, coming off a winning streak of 2 games, 1-6. Against the spread since 96. So this is a tough spot for the Hoosiers. My money will be on Michigan this weekend. All right. How do you like that? Hey, I took I'm going out on a leap there, Ross, and I'm putting put it on the line right there.
Well, there you go. It's and I could see why.
All right. Eric, let me see here. Almighty Adolf TV says, I'm good day with the totals last night in college football. Hit the under in the Eastern Michigan game and over in West Michigan and over in Ball State. So good job, buddy. Glad that things worked out. Eric, if you guys don't mind, can you touch on Ohio State versus Rutgers? Sure, we can do that in a few minutes, Eric. And what y'all think of the Utah State Nevada game tonight? All right, Wayne, we'll get to that in just a quick minute. Before we do, we're going to talk about our selections, guys. Each and every week, Ross and myself put our picks up at atsstats.com, and you can get those selections by visiting our website at atsstats.com, or if you're interested in Ross Benjamin's single-day picks, you can get them at rbwins.com. Ross, West Virginia Mountaineers taking on the Texas Longhorn. 2 teams that burned me last week. I had Kansas State against West Virginia, and at OSU against Texas Longhorns. So I apologize in advance if I sound a little bitter going into this game with these 2 teams.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, but looking at this game, we do have a good matchup here. You got the Longhorns, a 6-point favorite against the Mountaineers, the over-under at 54.5. And the forecast here, Ross, has a high-scoring game of 39.5 to 25.2, the over-under at 64.7. Now, Texas, 3-2 in their last 5 games. They are now 4-2 in the season. The over/under is 5-1. So, Texas being Texas and Herman and company putting a lot of points on the board when you look at their totals record. But West Virginia, 4-2 on the season, having a pretty good, decent year. That defense looks really good. On a side note, I know one of the players. He's here from Ottawa, so that's my little cheering pom-pom.
Inside information guy.
Yeah.
Or just a feather in your cap. He's from
feather. Yeah, I coached this player 4 years ago in our junior varsity program, and
I'm sure you're very proud.
Oh yeah, no, he's a great defensive player, and he's playing D-line right now with the twin brothers. And so looking at this game, for West Virginia, Kansas State, Kansas State started the rookie quarterback, and they had no running game to counter West Virginia's defense. Texas Tech, they went to Texas Tech, and let's be honest, they pooped the bed, right? 34-27. And Kansas, Kansas is awful, absolutely awful. And then Oklahoma State last week against Texas. What a great game! Like, take away my betting angle, it was a great game to watch, and it kept my interest the entire. Sometimes you can watch a college football game and at halftime you're like channel surfing.
Yes,
this had my attention the whole 60 minutes.
Yeah. Again, I go back to trusting the odds makers over trusting the pollsters. And West Virginia last week was a home favorite as an unranked team against number 16 Kansas State. Not to rub salt in the wound, Ron, but that was one of my winners last week with West Virginia. And then you look at the Oklahoma State Texas matchup, another one. You had the number 6 team in the land at the time in Oklahoma State as just a 3.5-point favorite against an unranked Texas team. That tells me two things. Okay. Number one, the bookmakers don't think a lot of Oklahoma State's number 6 ranking. And number two, if the game was at Texas, the way lines are usually formulated, Texas would be at somewhere around a 2.5-point favorite in that game. So if you switch sites and you saw Texas as a 2.5-point favorite as an unranked team over a number 6 ranked team, boy, oh boy, that would raise red flags for me. So again, my point is, I should say, is that trust the bookmakers over the pollsters, folks. Don't get misled.
No, great point, Ross. Absolutely. Again, it reminds me of March Madness, right? Like a 12 against a 5, and the 12's favorite. You got to, or the vice versa. You got to be careful with that, and don't get caught in that game with the coach's poll. And I agree with you. Think like a bookmaker, because the bookmakers, we're dealing with money. They're dealing with just their reputation.
Yeah, Ron, it's an odd year. I mean, again, it's refreshing to see programs like Liberty ranked number 25 and in Coastal Carolina ranked number 15. But it's a little bit askew, the rankings, because they're the beneficiary of having multiple games they played and not losing, where teams in the Big Ten and teams in the Pac-12 who haven't played yet, teams even in the Mountain West that have only played 2 games. It's hard to rank those teams over teams that are 6 and 7-0. So my point being is this: I have nothing against the rankings, but I do say more so this year than any other year, I can't pay attention, or nor should you pay attention to the rankings. Read between the lines, for lack of a better phrase.
Oh, so I guess Alan has, you made a comment here. He goes, it's not the bookmakers. The lines are made because of the team's power rankings and strength of schedule, not the poll rankings. Power rankings in every sport is how lines are made.
Well, thank you for letting me know that, because that's the point I was getting at.
Yeah.
Okay. But more so, it's this year than any other year, Alan, I'm referring to. Okay. So yes, that's how the lines are made. Okay. And that's why you trust the bookmakers, because they are basing those lines on their power rankings. Okay. Their power numbers, combination of the team itself and strength of schedule. So, and I thank you for bringing that point up, but you didn't discover the wheel, with all due respect.
And keep in mind, the number that they put out is basically which number can they get action on both sides of a game. That's their only objective, is to make their vigorish.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to put a number where they're going to want everybody betting one side. That's not their objective as a bookmaker. Their objective is to make their middle money, their vigorish, their 10% or whatever their vig is. And that's what they want to do. That's what they're trying to accomplish. We just got to read between the lines and find out, okay, is this a good line? And maybe that's a good point too, is like, don't get confused this line with trying to be balanced, too balanced, right? Yeah. And that's why it's important that, I always tell clients or people ask, make your own line. You got to make your own line on the game, because if you don't, then you're going to go with the bookmaker's line.
And to Ellen's point, Ron, Ellen, just realize that the majority of people out there aren't experienced sports bettors like you apparently are. Okay. With all due respect. And we're trying to educate people. There's a lot of novice bettors out there, especially now that the states has legalized sports gambling in the majority of the country. So keep that in mind when we're talking about instances like this. We're trying to use it as an educational tool, and some of the things that we may say or may bring to the audience attention, you may know already, and that's okay. But I didn't mean to be smart, but yeah, I mean, I've been doing this 20 years. I fully realize how the books make a line. I mean, I've been on the other side of the table too. So
Yeah.
in any event, I appreciate your support, Ellen, and I appreciate your viewing.
One thing, Ross, that I do here on the computer picks is if you see here, I have my line, the Vegas index I call, or the value index. I have Texas going into this game at -11, and I got West Virginia. And this is just if I were to buy this team today on the stock market against a faceless opponent, this is what I think their value is. And I got West Virginia at -7, and it's not against Texas. So I think no matter what, this is what I think the Texas is worth today on the stock market. And that's what I think West Virginia. And what I do is I take this line and I compare it to the bookmaker's line. And then I know, like right here, I know I got value on Texas. So that's why I would lean towards the Longhorn this weekend.
Yeah, it's a contrast of styles too. West Virginia is far the superior defensive team, and vice versa offense. Texas being the better offensive team by far over West Virginia. So whatever team performs better in terms of their weakness, West Virginia, if they step up offensively, or Texas, if they step up defensively, is going to win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah. Look at this. In the Raymond Report, we tracked teams that are winning. So against the spread, the last 30 days, home teams, 50%, home favorites, 57%, home underdogs, 60.19%, road favorites, 58, and road underdogs, 53.7%. So a lot of interesting numbers here. I'll have to break that down more with the SBI. All right. The next game, Ross, we're going to look at is Florida against Georgia. The big the big cocktail game there in Jacksonville? No.
The world's largest cocktail party.
Yeah.
It takes place annually in Jacksonville, Florida, at a neutral site.
Yeah, this is going to be hey, looking at this game, the way I look at it, it's the Florida's offense against Georgia Bulldogs defense.
Yep.
Now, the bookmaker has made Georgia a 4-point home or neutral site favorite, over under at 53.5. The forecast, Ross, sees the Gators pulling a little bit of an upset here. 20.3, 17.1, the over under at 37.5. For the Gators on the season right now, they are 3-1. Georgia 4-1 on the season. Their only loss was a couple of weeks ago to Alabama. Actually, Alabama on a Saturday night. That was the night where Nick Saban was getting off, recovering from COVID, and he coached in that game.
Yeah.
Looking at this game, Trask has been really good for Florida. And then you got the Georgia State defense. Man, aside from that Alabama game, they look at last week's game. Even though it was against, I believe, Kentucky, they only put on 14 points and they only allowed 3. But that has me a little bit concerned that you can only put 14 points against the Wildcats.
Well, the Wildcats are pretty good defensively. If you look, they're in the top 20, I believe, in scoring defense and total defense. But having said that, you're right, Ron. I mean, you would think with Georgia's defense limiting Kentucky to less than 200 yards, I think, in that game, or somewhere around there, that Georgia's offense would have been on the field more and been able to wear their defense down. But that didn't occur. I mean, again, this is similar to the game we just talked about, where one team is much the superior offense and the other team is much the superior defense. Definitely the quarterback advantage goes to Kyle Trask in Florida. This kid is really, really good. What's surprising about Florida this year, traditionally, they've been very good defensively, but they haven't been this year. So we'll see a little bit of give and take here. Georgia's won the last 3 matchups in this series. And Ron, with Florida being ranked number 8 and Georgia being ranked number 5, and both of them with 1 loss, I think it's safe to say this is an elimination game. Whoever loses this game can forget their aspirations of making the college football 14 playoff.
Yeah, no, and you got Stetson Bennett, the quarterback for Georgia. You just, he's not in the same league as Trask, that's for sure. And for Georgia to have a chance in this game, they're gonna have to score, man, because Florida can look at the 41, 38, 38. These guys can put points on you. But I'm trying to see which defense here is Texas A&M. That was a shootout where they lost to the old Florida State coach there.
Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher. And in Missouri, 41-17 as a 13-point favorite. Looking at the Stoops brothers, or in Kentucky, the Mark Stoops, the defensive coordinator, also, right, or he's head coach, defensive guy. So they had a good game plan against Georgia, and that has me a little bit concerned. Unless there's no way they were looking ahead to this game because they had to take care of Kentucky. Looking at the history, you said it, 24-17 the last year. The year before, 36-17, 42-7. So, Georgia has had their number. Now, looking at the program, Mullen, the coach for Florida, he's been awesome since he's been there.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah, he was at Mississippi State and he did good things there, and now he's Georgia. What a coaching matchup. Kirby Smart, Mullins, man, talk about a tough
an
week.
Offensive guru versus a defensive guru in Mullen versus Kirby Smart.
Now, here's the thing. In regular season games, I would normally tend to lean with the offensive guru in regular season games. In defense and playoff championships, I would lean towards the defense. And I think in this game, I'm going to go with the computer here, and I'm going to lean on the Florida Gators. And looking at my my chart, Ross, for the line on this game, I'm just going to bring up Florida. I know they're here somewhere. Maybe I'll do it really quick. Go Control F, Florida. Too many Florida teams. I got 8 Florida teams. There we go. I had Georgia at minus 14.5 at the value index, and I got Florida at minus 12. So if you take the difference, it's plus 2, and then you compare it to the line. So line value, I do like Florida. The chance of covering, I got 58% on the Raymond Report law of average theory, based on 50%, and then 53% for Georgia, and the Kogo at 38%. Man, what's the total again? The total is 53. Total might be a bit high here. If Florida can just place a bit of defense and not, are they going to play the same type of defense that they played against Texas A&M? But, that quarterback at Texas A&M, Mon.
Man. And then Mississippi, they've been scoring on everybody this year. So, you again, like you said, Ron, sometime you got to read between the lines there. Georgia has had the offensive struggles. They've been efficient, but the quarterback difference in these two games, in this game, is night and day. So, again, it's a tough call, in my opinion.
Coaching advantage, who do you give it to here?
A coaching advantage. I would probably it's dead even, in my opinion. Both guys have done really good jobs since taking over at the specific programs they're at right now. Mullen won at Mississippi State, which isn't an easy thing to do. And Kirby Smart, again, he's taken over a powerful program in Georgia. The other guy, Dan Mullen, has really resuscitated Florida's program that struggled for a while. I guess if I had to give an edge, I would give a small edge to Dan Mullen because he didn't take over a situation that was quite as good as the one that Kirby Smart took over in Georgia.
Yeah. Kirby Smart, he's done some good things at Georgia. In the big games though, that's one thing I probably should have looked at here. Who's won those big games in the last couple of years? And that's one thing, quarterback advantage, Florida, defense advantage, Georgia. Get your
gotta say
ready.
Georgia, right, Ron? As far as who won the big games, look, remember, not a couple years back, they lost the national championship to Alabama in overtime. Yeah. So if you base it on that, Ron, that theory, that you would have to say Georgia, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And look at this versus top ranked teams in the Rain Report. We have 19-20 in favor for Florida, not in favor, but 19-20 on offense, 20 on defense, and for Georgia, 21-16. So again, a little edge here to Georgia, but again, it's really tough. It's a tough game, but I'm going to lean towards Florida Gators. I think the value of getting +4, a good quarterback if we're behind in the fourth quarter. Put it this way. We're in the fourth quarter. There's 4 minutes left. who do you want on offense to have the ball? Stetson Bennett or the kid at Trask at Florida? Give me Florida +4. I think that's what it boils down to in my view. All right, let's take a look at man. We got some great games this weekend. Compared to last weekend, a couple of games. The last Clemson, Notre Dame. Hey, let's be honest. Clemson, they weren't expecting to lose their quarterback midweek. They weren't expecting Boston College to give them a dogfight like they did. Dabo Sweeney behind a lot of points there, almost 21 points, I believe, at one point against Boston College, and managed to come back and get the win. Dabo Sweeney, Ross, to me, is one of the best coaches in college football. I would never want to bet against this guy.
Yeah, hands down. He's the funny thing is he took over on an interim basis. How many times have we ever seen a coach in college football take over on an interim basis and number one, have the longevity he's had at the same job, and number two, have the success along with the longevity. So your point is very well taken, Ron. Notre Dame, a rare situation where they're a home underdog. Again, I look at this matchup in Clemson, to me, has far the superior advantage when it comes to athleticism and speed than Notre Dame. Notre Dame, to me, they've had a lot of success running the ball. But in my opinion, if they're going to win this game, they're going to have to throw for over 300 yards because I don't see them having sustained success running the ball like they have over a lot of weak opponents that they played so far. As a matter of fact, you look at Notre Dame's strength of schedule, Ron. I mean, you can make a case the best team they played so far is Pitt, and I think they're 3-4. All of their wins have come against teams that currently have a losing record. So they're going to have to step up big time in this matchup. And where Clemson is going to be without Trevor Lawrence. They were down 28-10 at the half last week. And you look at that true freshman quarterback, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce his name, last name, Ron. I'll leave that up to you.
Oh, thanks.
It wasn't by any stretch his fault that they fell behind by such a large margin. Matter of fact, I think he passed for like 360 yards last week against BC. That was instrumental in them coming back in that game. So, you'd love to have Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you're looking at a quarterback right now that may be the number one overall choice in next year's draft as compared to a true freshman. But, that true freshman acquitted himself admirably last week. The question is going to be, Ron, how is he going to perform on the road? Now, having said that, there's not going to be the normal 80,000 plus that he's going to have to contend with at Notre Dame. It's going to be somewhere around 16,000 people, but it's still playing on the road, right, Ron? So really looking forward to this game.
Well, here's my view on it, Ross. Clemson plays big games every second week. Notre Dame plays a big game twice a year.
Right.
Going into this game, Dabo Sweeney, he's not concerned. He's been. It's not his first barbecue. Notre Dame has been watching this game since the beginning of the year, and probably last year when they knew they were scheduling it. So all the pressure, and it's on Notre Dame. It's on Notre Dame. It's on because when you're on the road, you don't have your fans against you. You're not looking up. Now they're at home. They're going to have some fans in the stands. They know that pressure of playing well at home. You got Clemson and the rope-a-dope. Maybe they were down 28-13 at the half last week to Boston College and managed to win that game, 28-34. Yeah. I'm all over Clemson in this game. You're giving me the Clemson Tigers. When was the last time Clemson Tigers were a 5.5 point favorite?
A single-digit favorite, yeah.
That's and Notre Dame in the last 10 years, Ross, they've been a home underdog 8 times, and in those 8 times, they're 5-3 against the spread and straight up, and 3-5 to the over. But that's impressive. That's good. But the thing is, in 10 years, you've only been a home underdog 8 times. That is a nice.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean
that's
to cut
okay.
you off. The other. Here's the other part of the equation. Clemson's used to having a target on their head weekly. And I think that's where you were going with that, Ron.
Yeah, exactly.
Notre Dame had this game scheduled for a long time. Based on the strength of schedule for both teams and based on the fact that Trevor Lawrence isn't going to be playing this week, at the end of the year, when the selection committee gets together to choose the 4 teams that participate in the 4-team playoff, and I shouldn't say selection committee, the ranking, the guys who are in charge of ranking in that situation. You're almost inclined to think if Clemson loses this game, Ron, they're going to consider the fact that they played that game without Trevor Lawrence. And if they were to run the table the rest of the way, even with a loss here, then they're probably still going to be part of that 4-team playoff. With everything taken into account. Now, Notre Dame, on the other hand, if they lose this game, they're going to say, okay, well, you know what? There you go. They beat up on all losing teams, and when they had a chance to step up. So you're right. I mean, I'm agreeing with your point here and making your point even stronger, I think, in the fact that the pressure's all on Notre Dame. They don't win this game. Yeah, I mean, look, if they lose one game and it's against Clemson and they lose by 3, maybe they get consideration to be there at the end of the year in the 4-team playoff. But my personal opinion is they need to win this game to solidify their position.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I'm going to be all over Clemson this weekend. As much as Notre Dame is having a good year, look who they played: Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, Louisville, Florida State, South Florida, and Duke.
Yeah, nobody's got a winning record in that bunch, right, Ron? So
exactly. So strength of schedule has not done them favors, and this is why Notre Dame, hopefully after this year, when they reevaluate after COVID, that they do join a conference and start playing the real.
I mean, the ACC is a good start, right? They're playing an ACC schedule, but they haven't played a quality ACC team up until this point, And I agree, Ron. It's all economics, right, Ron? Because they're an independent for one reason, because they got that TV contract with NBC.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
They scrambled this year to get themselves a schedule because they had so many opponents that weren't starting or they couldn't go out of the state to play them, whatever the case may be. But I agree, Ron. I'd love to see them if not in the ACC would be a natural match because they're in the ACC in basketball too. So, and that would strengthen that conference considerably, which right now a lot of pundits would tell you that's a very top-heavy conference and has been for quite a while now.
Yeah. Oklahoma State going to Kansas State, play the Wildcats. Wildcats, tough loss last weekend in West Virginia. Oklahoma State losing to, and you know what? They outplayed Texas. The turnovers killed that team last week. You can't turn. I say it all the time. Turnovers and penalties will kill you, and that's what really hurt Oklahoma State. And Chuba Hubbard, he's a Canadian running back out of Edmonton, Sherwood Park. Great running back. I think he really hurt his chances last week of the Heisman by not showing up in that game and being a dominant running back against Texas. I really think he hurt his chances on a Heisman level. But going into this game, Ross, Oklahoma State minus 12.5, the over-under at 45.5. ATS forecast, the computer pick, going to go with the Cowboys to bounce back here. 39.2 to 7.5, the over-under at 46.7. Looking at the Cowboys' last 5 games, they are 4-1 straight up, but only 2-3 against the number, so only covering the spread 40%. 40% of the games have gone under the total in the last 5, where Kansas State 4-1 against the number. Going into this game, looking at their strength of schedule last 3, 33% compared to 44.5 for the Cowboys. The Cowboys on the road this season, only 1 game. That's surprising. Only played 1 game on the road, where Kansas State has played 3. They're 2-1 at home. Does Oklahoma State bounce back from last week?
I would say they will. The problem is the point spread makes it awful difficult to pull the trigger. I don't know. There's something about Kansas State, Ron. They're a very hard team to predict. I mean, they lay an egg last week against West Virginia. I went against them. Now they're at home as an underdog. They always seem to surprise when you're least expecting it. You follow me over the years. Now, the only thing I will say is I truly believe this line is escalated into double digits only because they lost their senior starting quarterback for the year. And now they're true freshmen. Everybody knows they have a book on him right now. And if you look last week, he was shut down against a very good West Virginia defense, and he's going to be facing another really good Oklahoma State defense. I mean, going into that Texas game last week, look, Texas is going to put points up on everybody. They're a very good offensive team with a stellar quarterback in Sam Ehlinger. But this week, it's a lot different facing a true freshman than Sam Ehlinger. And I think Kansas State is really going to have their hands full offensively in trying to move the ball on this Oklahoma State defense. And I will say one thing about Chuba Hubbard. Yeah, he might not win the Heisman, Ron, but not all Heisman Trophy winners turn into productive or successful pros. I mean, Joe Burrow is one of the exceptions, but I think he's going to be a real good pro, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't go in the first round of next year's draft.
Yeah, I hope so. It's just that when the Heisman watch, they look at the big games and how you done in big games, and that was a big game. Ehlinger took the team on his back in the fourth quarter and led them to victory.
Yeah, but what was Hubbard's numbers last week, Ron? Do you have those available?
I'll get them in a minute, but let me see here.
I don't think they were that bad, if I recall.
Yeah, I'll get them in a second. But looking at this game here, though, Ross, I'm Oklahoma. Here's the thing that's got me puzzled. This total right here, 45.5. I'm going in the database to find out when was Oklahoma State on the road had a total of 44.5 to 47. You got to go back to 2006 when they played Arkansas State. So they haven't seen a total like this since 2006.
Yeah, well, that's prior to Mike Gundy taking over as a head coach, which up until this year, they've been a pass-happy offense. Now, keep in mind, too, they're a totally different offense now with Spencer Sanders back at quarterback. He made some mistakes last week at critical times, but, he's far the better quarterback than who they were using in his place before then. And that helps Chuba Hubbard because now Oklahoma State is much more effective passing the ball with Sanders in the lineup. He's also a mobile quarterback, and that opens up the running game for Chuba Hubbard as well. And with Chuba Hubbard being successful, it opens up play action pass. So like I said, I think Kansas State is going to be in tough here. It just, to me, that's a lot of points to give a quality program like Kansas State at home, especially, I guess it's my own personal memory that they've burned me too many times. When you think they're down and out, they come up with a big game. But did you happen to look at Hubbard's numbers last week?
So I got the Oklahoma State 130 yards on offense, rushing the ball, and 400 yards passing. I'll check Hubbard in a second.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to remember too how many times that Sanders gets sacked in that game, because that goes against the rushing statistics. But in any event, you're right, Ron. It wasn't, based on those numbers, wasn't an atypical performance from Chuba Hubbard.
72 yards on 25 carries last week.
Yeah, no, not good at all. You're right, Ron. I mean, that's less than 3 yards a carry. They shut him down, which is hard to believe because Texas isn't a really good defense.
No, exactly. It's But, again, if I'm looking at this game, Ross, I'm leaning towards the over. I'm not touching the side. I don't trust Oklahoma after last week. Then this Kansas State defense, they're not that bad. They're not. Look at the teams they play. West Virginia, Kansas, okay, take down. TCU, 21-14. Texas Tech, 31-20. Oklahoma, 38-35. They pulled the upset there. And Arkansas State, now we know, we didn't know at the beginning of the year Arkansas State was going to be a pretty decent team. They got on offense anyways. Yeah. But, first game of the year, you don't know what you're really expecting. But that was a wake-up call for Kansas State.
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, Ron, Arkansas State returned 2 kicks for touchdowns in that game. So that 35 points allowed is a little bit askew. Yeah.
All right, let's go to that Liberty taking on Syracuse. Virginia Tech. Yeah, Virginia Tech. Yeah,
they already beat Syracuse.
Yeah. I just got to find this. Oh, God. Let me see here.
And again, Liberty right now in the AP poll is ranked number 25, Ron. And Virginia Tech somewhere around a 15-point favorite, if I'm not mistaken. And again, this raises a red flag. You have an unranked team in Virginia Tech as a better than 2 touchdown favorite against a ranked team. Now, here's the thing. If Virginia Tech comes to play, in my opinion, Ron, they're much the better side. But how, you're sticking this game in the middle of their conference schedule, right? Coming off a nice conference, a road win at Louisville last week. And this is Liberty's national championship game right now. You know what I mean? Going to Virginia Tech. So again, I wanted to fill the void there until you got this up.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Now going into this game, 15.5-point favorite for the Hokies, 67.5 is the total. We got a blowout here, Ross, 40.5 to 17.4, the over under at 57.9. Liberty having a great year, 6-0 on the season against Virginia Tech, 4-2. Now looking at Liberty's wins this year, Western Kentucky 30-24, FIU 36-34, beat North Alabama Lions, UL Monroe, Syracuse. Syracuse not having a really good year, but here it puzzles me though. Syracuse are a 40-point underdog to Clemson, and they hang with them. And then they lose. Then they lose to Liberty. So I just don't understand where Syracuse is like this.
They're terrible, sir. Oh, they're a mess. And Liberty was actually closed as a favorite in that game at Syracuse. So again, here's the thing too, Ron, if I may. Look at their opponents they've played. Their strength of schedule very weak. You played 5 FBS opponents that have a losing record right now. And you also beat North Alabama, who plays at the FCS level. So big edge and strength of schedule to Virginia Tech. Again, that doesn't assure the fact that Virginia Tech's going to win by a blowout. Like I said, in my opinion, if Virginia Tech is mentally right in this game, they're much the better side. And you got to take into account, this is a lot bigger game for Liberty than it is for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, no, and looking at Liberty, averaging, is this correct? 255 yards rushing a game.
Yeah, that's it. They're a good running team, and Virginia Tech's defense is not their strong suit either. Virginia Tech's running game, however, is extremely good as well. So if Liberty wants to hang in this game or even have a possibility of pulling the upset, they're going to have to stop that Virginia Tech running game.
Yeah, the only question I have here is, okay, I agree with you. This is their bowl game against a quality program like Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech coming off a win last week to Louisville. What kind of mindset are those players going to have knowing they beat Louisville at home? And are they coming this one like this is an easy one for them? We had our rough one last week. This is our breather. And then I got to check to see who they have now. Virginia Tech on deck next week.
Yeah, another conference game.
Yeah, so looking at, let me see their schedule here. Upcoming games. So they got Miami, Florida on deck. Wow.
Yeah, a nationally ranked team, not currently number 13, I believe, in the country. So, I mean, you're coming off a big road win at Louisville in conference play. You got a nationally ranked team on deck. Again, Ron, their first 6 opponents were all within their conference. You're sticking Liberty, a non-conference opponent who's been at the FBS level all of about 3 years, I think. And you're sticking it in the middle of your conference schedule. So it's, in terms of the point spread goes, it's a little bit of a dangerous spot to lay the points with Virginia Tech. But again, mindset, like you said, Ron, that's going to be the big key. If Virginia Tech is mentally right, they're much the better side.
Yeah. Looking at Liberty on the road this year, 2-0 straight up and against the spread, 2-0 to the over, and Virginia Tech 2-0 straight up and against the spread. So not much difference there in the line value. Home favorites this year on 6 days rest, 65-20 straight up, but only 36, 47-2 against the number, where road underdogs on 13 days rest. So they've had a bit of a break here. 4-26 straight up, 18-12.
That's a good point too, Ron. They're coming off a bye week, Liberty. So, I mean, where Virginia Tech played last week, they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this matchup.
Yeah.
So that's a great point you just brought up.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? If you guys, if you believe in handicapping angles, where there's a look ahead for Virginia Tech coming off a big win last week, they got a breather this week that they're not maybe taking their opponent that serious. Liberty plus 15.5 might be worth a look here this weekend.
And not only that, a nationally ranked opponent on deck in Miami of Florida for Virginia Tech.
Real quickly, Ross, Eric Catherine is asking our thoughts on Rutgers plus 37. I'll have to bring up that game here.
Eric, I'll let Ron talk, but obviously I'll let Ron talk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ron, that's probably a big play on that game.
Yeah. So, but yeah. I steer away from these games when it's that big of a spread. My personal feeling always when I look to take an underdog is they have a realistic chance of winning the game outright. And I don't think I think it's very unrealistic to think that Rutgers is going to pull the upset here. And I understand where you're going with this. Ohio State, much the better side. How much are they going to be up mentally for this game, especially after coming off that decisive win on the road against Penn State, another nationally ranked team at the time? So I would stay away. I mean, Rutgers one win this year against Michigan State. Yeah, it looks a lot better now because Michigan State knocked off Michigan. But how good is Michigan really? And you got to remember the one win the Rutgers had, they were beneficiaries of 7 Penn State turnover or 7 Michigan State turnovers in that game.
Is this a typo? A 51-point favorite?
What's that?
Last year?
No, that's not a typo. That's not a typo. Remember, Rutgers went into the year having lost, I think, 20-something games in a row within the Big Ten Conference. So, they've been a perennial doormat, and a fresh air now with Greg Schiano back in charge at Rutgers. But you got to give him a year or two before you start contending with the likes of Ohio State.
Eric, look at this. The last 6 games, 56-17, 49-7, 58-0, 56-0, 52-3, 56-21. So if you're holding out for a prayer, I would pass on this game and look at another game because you got a quarterback who's up for the Heisman. And Rutgers just trying to really build their program, and they're off to a good start. With Schiano, a good coach, but I think there's better games to be looking at.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly in all due respect to the question, and thank you for the question, by the way, Eric. There's a lot better value you could find on the board than in this game. Yeah.
So, all right, just before you go, Ross, just see if there's any other questions. I think Utah State Nevada game from Wayne. Let me bring that up here. Utah State. Yeah, Utah State's. We got 44-21 for Nevada. Nevada coming off that win last week against their state rival. UNLV was a 37-19 win. They were a 14-point road favorite in that game. So you know what? This game here, looking at the numbers, I want to see what my line on this game was.
Yeah, the line really went up in this game. I think Nevada opened at like a 14.5 or 13.5 point favorite, or now as much as somewhere in the neighborhood of 17-18, if I'm not mistaken, Ron.
Yeah.
This is not the same Utah State program that we're used to seeing. Jordan Love, now gone. Member of the Green Bay Packers, their outstanding quarterback they've had the last few years. This is going to be a down year for Utah State. They haven't shown anything whatsoever offensively in their first 2 games, averaging a mere 10 points and 209 yards per game. Nevada in the first 2 games, on the other hand, 770 yards passing combined in those 2 wins that came over. I don't have that in front of me. I believe UNLV, and I think Nevada also knocked off a pretty good Wyoming team. So I would say that this is a situation I'd probably look to lay the number, but I think we've lost a little bit of value in doing so by the escalation of this line from the opener, Ron.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ross. If I were to play this game, I'd play Nevada tonight. A better team, computer all over, 44-21. And then losing your star quarterback to the NFL, That tells me you're rebuilding on offense. So Nevada minus the points at home. That's where I would lean. All right, folks. Hey, great show today. I want to thank everybody who watched today on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Can't wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow's Football Friday, where me and Ross will break down 5 games. We're going to talk about Seattle, Buffalo, Chicago, Tennessee, Miami, Arizona, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and Baltimore, Indianapolis.
Pretty good matchups there, Ron.
Oh, those are great games, buddy. I'm looking forward to breaking those days. Yeah. And Ross, before we go, if people want to get your college football selections for this weekend, where can they get them?
You can get them at atsstats.com, where I offer weekly and monthly packages. And like my site, rbwins.com, I guarantee the same thing at Ron's site. If you get a weekly or monthly package from me there, at the end of your subscription, if you're not making a profit, we will extend your subscription until you do. Also, if you like to dabble in once in a while and just not want to play every day, well, you can get my daily packages or daily selections Monday through Sunday right at my website, rbwins.com. Special note, folks, the NFL have been very good with this year. As a matter of fact, 26-15 with my last 41 this year in the NFL. That's 63%. And that includes 10-5 over my last 15 as well. So that's rbwins.com or atsstats.com, which is Ron Raymond's site. Back to you, Ron.
Yeah, before you get my selections at the same website, atsstats.com, I'll have 2-3 college football picks for this weekend, and I'll have my regular 5 for the NFL. And I got a quick question before I go. It says, why does it say 100% chance of covering for Utah State? That's because there's not enough games in the system, and it's based on the law of average theory. So the reason why it says chances of chances of covering, where was it, 100%? It's based on the law of 50% average. So they're 0-2 on the season. So to get
and the
back,
other team's 2-0. So
exactly. So that's why it's based on the law of average of them getting back to 50%. Yeah. It normally kicks in once we get 3 or 4 more games into the system. Then the percentage play gets a little bit better.
I would say this though, if you're looking at that stuff on Ron's site, just keep in mind the computer has covered 69% of the time this year on point spreads, and that's NFL and college football combined. And then also on the totals, it's been over 70%. So I would pay more attention if you're just going to look at computer predictions to those numbers in terms of the prediction on the score, more than the law of averages in conferences that have just begun, like the Mountain West and Big Ten.
Exactly. So once we get more systems, Jared, then that number tends to round out and has a better angle to it. Yeah. Roy wants to say, hey, fellas, Ross, I know you like Roy.
Hey, Roy. What's up, my man?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that because I want to hear you say Roy.
Yeah, man. I love that name.
I know you do. All right. He's Ross Benjamin. I'm Ron Raymond. This was the Raymond Report along with Ross Benjamin for a Thursday, November 5th. Hope you guys have yourself a great rest of your day. As always, hope to see you tomorrow. Shop for value. Play those percentages. We'll see you back shortly with another Raymond